Welcome back. This is Miss Knight. Continuing on with Lord of the Flies, Chapter 10, The Shell and the Glasses. This is part 2 of the chapter. We're picking up right after Jack has a meeting with his kind of new tribe and declares that they will go hunting that night, and that they will, implies that they will be stealing fire. Piggy handed Ralph his glasses and waited to receive back his sight. The wood was damp, and this was the third time they had lighted it. Ralph stood back, speaking to himself. We don't want another night without fire. He looked around guiltily at the 3 boys standing by. This was the first time he had admitted the double function of the fire. Certainly one was to send up a beckoning column of smoke, but the other was to be a hearth now and a comfort until they slept. Eric breathed on the wood till it glowed and sent out a little flame. A billow of white and yellow smoke reeked up. Piggy took back his glasses and looked at the smoke with pleasure. If only we could make a radio, or a plane, or a boat. Ralph dredged in his fading knowledge of the world. We might get taken prisoner by the Reds. Eric pushed back his hair. They'd be better than... He would not name people, and Sam finished the sentence for him by nodding along the beach. Ralph remembered the ungainly figure on a parachute. He said something about a dead man. He flushed painfully at this admission that he had been present at the dance. He made urging motions at the smoke with his body. Don't stop. Go on up. Smoke's getting thinner. We need more wood already, even when it's wet. My asthma... The response was mechanical. Sucks to your asthma. If I pull logs about, I get my asthma bad. I wish I didn't, Ralph, but there it is. The 3 boys went into the forest and fetched armfuls of rotten wood. Once more the smoke rose, yellow and thick. Let's get something to eat. Together they went to the fruit trees, carrying their spears, saying little, cramming in haste. When they came out of the forest again, the sun was setting and only embers glowed in the fire, and there was no smoke. I can't carry any more wood, said Eric. I'm tired. Ralph cleared his throat. We kept the fire going up there. Up there it was small, but this has got to be a big one. Ralph carried a fragment to the fire and watched the smoke that drifted into the dusk. We've got to keep it going. Eric flung himself down. I'm too tired, and what's the good? Eric, cried Ralph in a shocked voice, don't talk like that. Sam knelt by Eric. Well, what is the good? Ralph tried indignantly to remember. There was something good about a fire, something overwhelmingly good. Ralph's told you often enough, said Piggy moodily. How else are we going to be rescued? Of course, if we don't make smoke. He squatted before them in the crowding dusk. Don't you understand? What's the good of wishing for radios and boats? So we've seen this so many times. The boys and also Ralph himself forget why they need the fire. They get so caught up in the difficulties of the island that they can't think about the idea of rescue, which sounds bananas, but they're so worried about kind of their own survival that it's just too abstract, too out there. Piggy, however, never forgets, and the reason he can remember is because he needs civilization and society to survive. He's so disliked, and he's so unfit to kind of take care of himself in this wilderness that if fire and rescue are forgotten, he is going to die. He held out his hand and twisted the figures into a fist. There's only one thing we can do to get out of this mess. Anyone can play at hunting. Anyone can get us meat. He looked from face to face. Then, at the moment of greatest passion and conviction, the curtain flapped in his head, and he forgot what he had been driving at. He knelt there, his fist clenched, gazing solemnly from one to the other. Then the curtain whisked back. Oh yes, so we've got to make smoke, and more smoke. But we can't keep it going. Look at that. The fire was dying on them. 2 to mind the fire, said Ralph, half to himself. That's 12 hours a day. We can't get any more wood, Ralph. Not in the dark. Not at night. We can light it every morning, said Piggy. Nobody ain't going to see smoke in the dark. Sam nodded vigorously. It was different when the fire was up there. Ralph stood up, feeling curiously defenseless with the darkness pressing in. Let the fire go, then, for tonight. He led the way to the first shelter, which still stood, though battered. The bed leaves lay within, dry and noisy to the touch. In the next shelter, a little one was talking in his sleep. The 4 Biggins crept into the shelter and burrowed under the leaves. The twins lay together, and Ralph and Piggy at the other end. For a while there was the continual creak and rustle of leaves as they tried for comfort. "Piggy? Yeah? All right? I suppose so." At length, save for an occasional rustle, the shelter was silent. An oblong of blackness, relieved with brilliant spangles, hung before them, and there was the hollow sound of surf on the reef. Ralph settled himself for his nightly game of supposing. Supposing they could be transported home by jet, then before morning they would land at that big airfield in Wiltshire. They would go by car, too. No, for things to be perfect, they would go by train, all the way to Devon, and take that cottage again. And then, at the foot of the garden, the wild ponies would come and look over the wall. Ralph turned restlessly in the leaves. Dartmoor was wild, and so were the ponies, but the attraction of wilderness had gone. His mind skated to a consideration of a tamed town where savagery could not set foot. What could be safer than the bus center with its lamps and wheels? All at once, Ralph was dancing round a lamp standard. There was a bus crawling out of the bus station, a strange bus. "Ralph! Ralph!" "What is it?" "Don't make a noise like that." "Sorry." From the darkness of the further end of the shelter came a dreadful moaning, and they shattered the leaves in their fear. Sam and Eric, locked in an embrace, were fighting each other. "Sam! Sam! Hey, Eric!" Presently all was quiet again. Piggy spoke softly to Ralph. "We gotta get out of this." "What do you mean?" "Get rescued." For the first time that day, and despite the crowding blackness, Ralph sniggered. "I mean it," whispered Piggy. "If we don't go home soon, we'll go balmy." "Round the bend. Bomb happy. Crackers." Ralph pushed the damp tendrils of his hair out of his eyes. "You write a letter to your auntie." Piggy considered this solemnly. "I don't know where she is now, and I haven't got an envelope and a stamp. And there isn't a mailbox. Or a postman." The success of his tiny joke overcame Ralph. His sniggers became uncontrollable. His body jumped and twitched. Piggy rebuked him with dignity. "I haven't said anything all that funny." Ralph continued to snigger, though his chest hurt. His twitchings exhausted him till he lay, breathless and woebegone, waiting for the next spasm. During one of these pauses, he was ambushed by sleep. "Ralph, you've been making a noise again. Do be quiet, Ralph, because—" Ralph heaved over among the leaves. He had reason to be thankful that his dream was broken, for the bus had been nearer and more distinct. "Why because?" "Be quiet and listen." Ralph lay down carefully to the accompaniment of a long sigh from the leaves. Eric moaned something and lay still. The darkness, save for the useless oblong of stars, was blanket thick. "I can't hear anything. There's something moving outside." Ralph's head prickled. The sound of his blood drowned all else, then subsided. "I still can't hear anything." "Listen. Listen for a long time." Quite clearly and emphatically, and only a yard or so away from the back of the shelter, a stick cracked. The blood roared again in Ralph's ears. Confused images chased each other through his mind. A composite of these things was prowling around the shelters. He could feel Piggy's head against his shoulder and the convulsive grip of a hand. "Ralph! Ralph! Shut up and listen." Desperately, Ralph prayed that the beast would prefer little uns. A voice whispered horribly outside. "Piggy! Piggy!" "It's come!" gasped Piggy. "It's real!" He clung to Ralph and reached to get his breath. "Piggy, come outside." "I want you, Piggy." Ralph's mouth was against Piggy's ear. "Don't say anything." "Piggy, where are you? Piggy!" Something brushed against the back of the shelter. Piggy kept still for a moment. Then he had his asthma. He arched his back and crashed among the leaves with his legs. Ralph rolled away from him. Then there was a vicious snarling in the mouth of the shelter, and the plunge and thump of living things. Someone tripped over Ralph and Piggy's corner. Became a complication of snarls and crashes and flying limbs. Ralph hit out, then he and what seemed like a dozen others were rolling over and over, hitting, biting, scratching. He was torn and jolted, found fingers in his mouth and bit them. A fist withdrew and came back like a piston, so the whole shelter exploded into light. Ralph was twisted sideways on top of a writhing body and felt hot breath on his cheek. He began to pound the mouth below him, using his clenched fist as a hammer. He hit with more and more passionate hysteria as the face became slippery. A knee jerked up between his legs, and he fell sideways, busying himself with his pain, and the fight rolled over him. Then the shelter collapsed with smothering finality, and the anonymous shapes fought their way out and through. Dark figures drew themselves out of the wreckage and flitted away, till the screams of the little ones and Piggy's gasps were once more audible. Ralph called out in a quavering voice, "All you little uns, go to sleep. We've had a fight with the others. Now go to sleep." Sam and Eric came close and peered at Ralph. "Are you two all right?" "I think so. I got busted." "So did I. How's Piggy?" They hauled Piggy clear of the wreckage and leaned him against a tree. The night was cool and purged of immediate terror. Piggy's breathing was a little easier. "Did you get hurt, Piggy?" "Not much." "That was Jack and his hunters," said Ralph bitterly. "Why can't they leave us alone?" "We gave them something to think about," said Sam. Honesty compelled him to go on. "At least, you did. I got mixed up with myself in a corner." So Sam was in a corner, accidentally fighting himself. "I gave one of them what for," said Ralph. "I smashed him up all right. He won't want to come and fight us again in a hurry." "So did I," said Eric. "When I woke up, one was kicking me in the face. I got an awful bloody face, I think, Ralph. But I did him in the end." "What did you do?" "I got my knee up," said Eric with simple pride, "and I hit him with it in the pills. You should have heard him holler. He won't come back in a hurry either. So we didn't do too badly." So it was Eric that kneed Ralph between the legs, and it was Ralph who punched Eric in the face, and both of them are so proud of themselves that they did a good job defending themselves against the others that they don't, I think, realize that they really just beat each other up. Ralph moved suddenly in the dark, but then he heard Eric working at his mouth. "What's the matter?" "Just a tooth loose." Piggy drew up his legs. "You all right, Piggy?" "I thought they wanted the conch." Ralph trotted down the pale beach and jumped onto the platform. The conch still glimmered by the chief's seat. He gazed for a moment or two, then went back to Piggy. "They didn't take the conch." So they didn't take the conch. This is the second time they've kind of raided the beach area and not taken the conch. And they don't need... Piggy doesn't seem to understand they don't need the conch. Piggy is so focused on society and democracy and the protection that it gives him as someone who's not well liked, that he kind of assumes that everybody values those things. And he doesn't realize that Jack doesn't need the conch. Jack has other symbols that give him authority. He has the dance. He has hunting. These rituals give him power. He does not need a shell. But Piggy doesn't understand that. "I know. They didn't come for the conch. They came for something else. Ralph, what am I going to do?" Far off along the bow stave of the beach, 3 figures trotted towards the castle rock. They kept away from the forest and down by the water. Occasionally they sang softly. Occasionally they turned cartwheels down by the moving streak of phosphorescence. The chief led them, trotting steadily, exulting in his achievement. He was a chief now in truth, and he made stabbing motions with his spear. From his left hand dangled Piggy's broken glasses. All right, so Jack has now not only taken their fire, but taken their ability to make fire. And there is some irony in that. Remember that the hunters and Jack were tasked with keeping the signal fire up and going. That was supposed to be their job. And they failed at that job, which had led to a number of things happening. And now they kind of have this reverse Prometheus situation where in the Greek myth, Prometheus steals fire from the gods to bring it to humans to cook their food and keep them warm and feeling safe. Jack is the opposite. He's stealing fire from the humans so that they can't cook food or feel safe or have that warmth and protection, and is taking it to his tribe.